New question, member from Kitchener-Conestoga.
Yeah, okay. My question is to the Premier. Premier, when we asked you yesterday about allegations you, and specifically your Deputy Chief of Staff, offered taxpayer-funded positions in return for political favour, you told us you were only working to keep the candidate involved in the party 8 separate times. Premier, isn't this just code for getting Andrew to step aside, endorse Glenn, shut up and obey? Premier, can you tell Ontarians whether it was the full-time job in the constituency office, the part-time job in the constituency office, or the government appointments, supports or commissions that you and your deputy were offering to keep Mr. Olivier involved with the Liberal Party?
Justice of the peace.
Mr. Speaker, as I have said a number of times, the conversations that took place about keeping the former candidate involved were conversations in the context of a decision having been made about an appointment. The fact is that the authority as the leader of the Liberal Party that I have is an authority that comes from the party, Mr. Speaker. We have a constitution. The constitution allows me to appoint a candidate. So the fact is I had made that decision that I was going to appoint a candidate. That candidate was going to be Glenn Thibeault, Mr. Speaker. So there was no question of who the candidate was going to be. The only question was whether the past candidate wanted to stay involved in the party in any way. That's what the conversations were about, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker, the Premier can BS us all she wants in this House, but
Withdraw, please.
withdraw.
Buck, I have now made this decision in my mind. I will not accept that term because what you cannot say indirectly, you will not say directly, and it impugns that. Please finish.
Sitting across from the OPP Speaker, she better start telling the truth. Premier, you said you'd be different. You said you were committed to accountability, committed to transparency. Today, you lead a government under the cloud of 3 separate OPP investigations, a record, Premier. Your Deputy Chief of Staff is clearly heard on tape, clearly understood by people across Ontario to be offering a taxpayer-funded job to Mr. Olivier. Premier, you say the duties of the Deputy Chief of Staff are separate from the ongoing investigation. But that's just the point, Premier. Your deputy crossed that line the moment she offered Mr. Olivier a government job. Premier, tell your never retreat, never explain, never apologize Deputy Chief of Staff to resign today.
Hear, hear.
Again, Mr. Speaker, let's just go over what happened. The fact is, I made a decision to appoint a candidate in the Sudbury by-election. Having made that decision, Mr. Speaker, there was an attempt to keep a young man who had run for the party involved. As I suspect, I hope that someone over there is going to be talking to Paula Peroni and hoping that she might stay involved in the party. Or maybe you just cut her loose. What we want to do on this side, Mr. Speaker, is keep people involved. So Glenn Thibeault was going to be the candidate, Mr. Speaker. The attempts to reach out to the